Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. It's Doug Lesmerises here in the podcast feed, and we are going to be talking about announcers on this edition of the show because I think announcers are really important. And sometimes this TV stuff makes me get a headache, and I think it does for you. Believe it or not, I don't think the main reason people like college football is because how much money their program is worth to a TV network. So some of this realignment stuff, some of the TV network contract stuff, I don't know if fans care about it. I think what you care about, though, is announcers. And so we have some interviews coming up because this is a huge change for Ohio State and Big Ten fans this season. It's the beginning of a whole new world, and that got unveiled at Big Ten Media Days last week. And so we want to talk about that and sort of talk you through it and get you prepped for it. I think maybe you know, but I don't want to assume you know everything about this. And in this feed, right, Kings of Columbus, just to be clear, I'm not the king, and Landis is not the king. The Kings are the Buckeyes, right? Like they're the Kings of Columbus. That's why we named it that. So if you were like, my gosh, these guys just started a podcast and they're already crowning themselves, we're not. Our egos, I won't speak for Landis. My ego is gigantic, but I would not call myself a king in a show that I hosted. So Kings of Columbus in the podcast feed, we're going to be bringing it to you multiple times a week. And we want to talk today. We talked to Gary Danielson from CBS, who's going to be in your life, Ohio State fans, as the analyst on the CBS games that they do for the Big Ten this year. And they're just getting in a little bit this year. You're going to get a lot of CBS down the line. And we talked to old friend Joshua Perry, who is part of the new NBC studio show. They're building up a whole studio show around their coverage. You're going to get 3 NBC games involving Ohio State this year, what has been announced and what has been reported. So let me take you through this because, again, these are the people. I know some of you turn off the TV sound and listen to Paul Keels and Jim Lachey. That's great. But if you don't, just like me and Landis and Berm and Austin and everybody out there in the world that you listen to, they become part of your life. So last year, at the end, we'll talk about game day. Is game day going to be at Ohio State less often now that the Big Ten does not have a contract with ABC, ESPN? I asked those questions last year when ABC and ESPN were finishing up their final games in Columbus. And I have some stuff from that I want to talk about because then that matters to you too. Last year, this is our frame of reference. Last year, 12 regular season Ohio State games. 5 were on Fox, 5 were on ABC, ESPN, and 2 were on the Big Ten Network. Of those Fox games, 4 of the 5 were Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. Okay, you got the big dogs from Fox for 4 of the 5 Fox games. For the ABC, ESPN games, 3 of the 5 were Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. So the 12 regular season games for Ohio State last year, you got big time, the best of the best announcing crews in 7 of the 12. Gus and Joel for 4, Herbie and Fowler for 3. Okay, but overall by network, because again, the old contract was Fox and ESPN, ABC like split it. Fox had first choice, which is why Fox always has Ohio State, Michigan, and will continue. And then BTN worked in there. The BTN's got to get a little Ohio State. So like find an Ohio State bad opponent game, they're going to be on BTN. 5-5-2 last year. This is what I think it's going to be this year. I would guess you're going to get 5 Fox games this year, 3 on NBC, 2 on CBS, and 2 on the Big Ten Network. So that's going to be your new world. The Fox stuff shouldn't change. That's going to be Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt for the Michigan game. And I would guess, I don't know, they haven't announced it yet. I would guess Ohio State, Penn State is going to be on Fox, would be my guess. And that will also be Gus and Joel. So last year, you didn't get Gus and Joel until late in the year. It took a while. It's kind of like, they're kind of like the guys now for Ohio State announcing. I think this matters to you, right? You didn't get Gus and Joel last year until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th game. But then they did 4 of the final 6. Okay. So you got a big old helping of Gus and Joel at the end of the year. Okay. I think you'll get 5 Fox games this year. You're going to definitely get 3 NBC. And this is going to be Noah Eagle as the play-by-play guy who you do not know. His dad is Ian Eagle, who does NFL stuff. It's very good. Noah is like him, but as a baby. No, like not all children are exactly like their parents. My children would tell you that, but he was there. I didn't talk to him. He just looks exactly like his dad. So, there's DNA in there. So if you know Ian Eagle, then you kind of know Noah Eagle. So it's going to be Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. So Todd Blackledge has done ABC, ESPN stuff before. Todd Blackledge did an Ohio State game last year. Todd Blackledge and Sean McDonough did the Northwestern game. So maybe it'll be windy when Todd Blackledge is here. So NBC is going to have the Ohio State Notre Dame game, and they're going to have the Ohio State Michigan State game. That's been officially announced. And then Brett McMurphy said, hey, here's what all the NBC games are going to be. He also said they're going to do Ohio State, Wisconsin. So I would prepare yourself for 3 NBC games, prime time. That NBC game is going to be in prime time. That's the noon big time night game. Instead of that being ABC, ESPN, that's going to be NBC. Instead of it being Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit, it's going to be Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. Get ready for 3 of those. Now, CBS is going to be a big part of the Big Ten starting next year. CBS is still doing SEC this year. So this is a crossover year in a lot of ways, right? Where, for instance, in the Big 12, they're adding 4 teams and they're losing 2, but this is one crossover year. Same with the Big Ten TV contract. Do you care about this? Do you care about the announcers? Let's talk about all the financials. Let's get a spreadsheet. Oh, college football fans love spreadsheets. I don't know why we cover it so much sometimes. The people in your ears, Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler as the play-by-play, Gary Danielson as the analyst. They're still going to do a bunch of SEC games this year. Starting in 2024, ESPN takes over the whole SEC contract, and CBS will be all in on the Big Ten. So get ready for more Gary Danielson next year. And also get ready for Gary Danielson later in this podcast. He's a great guy to ask about comparing the SEC and the Big Ten because he's coming from like 20 years of SEC stuff. And he did some Big Ten before. Now he's going to do a lot of Big Ten now. They're going to do the opener. The opener at Indiana at 3:30 is on CBS. And I am sure you are getting Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. They announced they're doing 7 games overall. CBS is doing 7 Big Ten games this year. They've announced 5. And then they said, we're going to do another game on these 2 other weekends. One of those weekends, the game's already taken, the Ohio State game. It's not going to be on CBS. The other one is November 4th against Rutgers. I'm going to guess CBS is going to take that if they can, right? Hey, we won Ohio State twice in our first year. So that's why I'm projecting 2 CBS games for you. So in the end, the projection for this year, right? 5 Fox, 3 NBC, 2 CBS, and 2 Big Ten Network. Now, Joshua Perry was the analyst on the Big Ten Network games last year. Now he's with NBC. He's moving up in the world, man. So I don't know exactly who the crew's going to be, but it'll be like Youngstown State's going to be a Big Ten game, Big Ten Network game. Here's what's been announced. Ohio State, Indiana opener, CBS, expect Nessler and Danielson. Of course, it's going to be that. They're going to kick off with that. Youngstown State in week 2 is a Big Ten Network game. Fox gets week 3, Western Kentucky. I don't know if that'll be Gus and Joel or like a secondary Fox team. Week 4, Notre Dame, that's going to be NBC. So the first 4 games are officially announced. And then you get Michigan, and the end of the year is Fox, and Michigan State has been announced as NBC. So I just want you to be ready for who's coming in your world because it does matter to you. So that's the new plan. And we wanted to introduce you to a couple of those people. I should have gotten Joel Klatt. Because here's the thing. This is such a big deal that at the Big Ten Media Days, they had Joel Klatt from Fox, Gary Danielson from CBS, and Todd Blackledge from NBC up on the stage together, like announcing some coaches together on the first day. And it was like when Anne Hathaway and James Franco hosted the Oscars together. And it was like, is this good? I don't know. So, but it was 3 of them because it's like, look at us. We're 3 networks, but we're 3 buddies. And they even had like scripted jokes kind of thing. And it was, I don't know. But in a world where that's all new. And Herbie and Fowler, nowhere to be seen. So that's a big deal for them. And like they keep talking about like, hey, you're going to be on these big networks and stuff. So those, they're famous networks. Get ready, right? There's no Ohio State on Peacock yet this year. So like we'll get you prepped for when we like all like alert, like, hey, I think the Big Ten is kind of like messing with you a little bit. they're not doing that now. So let's get ready. Gary Danielson, just get to know him. Brief, a little quick hitter interview with him. And then Joshua Perry, who I think it's a good hire by NBC because Josh Perry, Big Ten Network experience, former Ohio State linebacker. NBC, which has been doing Notre Dame, needs to be familiar to Big Ten fans. So that studio crew for the NBC is going to be Maria Taylor, very familiar as the host. Matt Castle, he was a backup quarterback. Joshua Perry, Michael Robinson, the former Penn State quarterback who then played fullback in the NFL, and Ahmed Fareed, I believe is I'm saying his name correctly. That's that crew for the studio. So get ready for that. We'll come back and talk about game day at the end of this. But for now, my interviews with Gary Danielson and Joshua Perry here on Kings of Columbus. Here with Gary Danielson, who I think is perhaps as qualified to talk about what I want to ask you about, Gary, as anybody in the country. What are differences, you think, between Big Ten Northern football and Southern SEC football? And I mean on the field, but I also mean regionally, culturally.
I don't think it's as big a gap as people think off the field. I know it's how important it is. Southern college football is to that Southeast footprint. They didn't, for years and years and years, they did not have the pro football teams to root for. Their schools, in the South, I always got the feeling that after I would meet people who show me pictures of their family, they would show me pictures of the stadium from the SEC team that they follow. But it's not that unlike Ohio State fans or Michigan fans, that the teams that have had success up in the North. But in the South, it does seem a little broader. The Big Ten has maybe two programs that measure success being in national championship competition. Let's put it that way. In the Southeast, in the conference I've been covering for 17 years, it's 6 teams. Tennessee, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. If their team isn't competing to play for the championship, they're looking for a new coach. So the standards are very high. But I think also, right now, the demographics have changed a bit. There seems to be a few more players in the South that weren't there years ago when the Big Ten was the name school, the name conference. That seems to be ebbing back because players are willing to go anywhere now to play. And I think that's the future with the exposure that the Big Ten's going to get here with 3 broadcast networks and the ability to be on national television. The Big Ten should make a big run at acquiring talent because that, if you look at the NFL draft and the SEC has half of the first round in the draft, the fan notices that. The Big Ten has to step up and acquire better talent as they go forward.
I think it's maybe just coincidental as we get towards a 12-team playoff world, but it feels like to me that the Big Ten is rising to the challenge a little bit. When you think about what Penn State looks like this year, what Michigan's done, what USC is going to bring to it. Nebraska has a new coach. Wisconsin has a new coach. Those are established programs maybe trying to take the next step. It feels like to me that the Big Ten at the top is as healthy. I've been doing Big Ten stuff for 18 years. I covered a lot of Big Ten that was like, well, it's Ohio State and then what?
Exactly.
And it feels like the Big Ten's going beyond that as we get to this new era of college football.
So the next step for that, you're right about that. It's for the Big Ten, it's important how Penn State does this year. They've got a really good football team. It's time for them to step up, win some big games, get into the playoffs. They're ready to do that. They're talented enough to do that. We got a young quarterback, but he's got the pedigree to lead this very talented, very, very talented Penn State team. But you got to win. You got to win some clutch games. The unknown statement about Alabama, yes, they were fantastically talented, but they were clutch. They won numerous close games that could have gone the other way with clutch plays at the end of the games, drives when everything was on the line. Same with Georgia. Stetson Bennett won games when they were losing at Missouri and they pulled it out. You got to win some clutch games. But you're right. If Penn State takes the step, and then the importance of USC coming into the conference, if they become, what they were and stay that way, having 4 marquee teams, I think should level the playing field and reestablish the Big Ten as equal and second to none.
I've viewed college football through an Ohio State lens for 18 years, covering the Buckeyes. You've been in the SEC, but Ohio State does matter. Ohio State's playing. How do people in the South look at a team like Ohio State?
No, ultimate respect. They understand Ohio State is the way they say it is Ohio State is an SEC program playing in the Big Ten.
Okay,
that's how they show their respect for a football team, because they see the number of players getting drafted. They see the way they've competed when they've played against them, so they've got the ultimate respect. And the fan base for Ohio State is serious. They hold their coaches accountable. They hold their players accountable. They hold you and I accountable. You have to do a good job. You better be right. So they're the most like what it's like coaching and being a part of a program in the Southeast.
It's not. I was maybe thinking we were going to get to a point where it's the SEC and the Big Ten, and that is major college football. I don't think we're going to get that far. But I think we are going to get to a point, and we're there now, where we know what the SEC is, adding Oklahoma and Texas. We know what the Big Ten maybe is getting toward, adding USC and UCLA. How close do you think the Big Ten on the field, from the level of competition and the talent? We know what the SEC is. Can the Big Ten approach that in years to come?
I think at the top they can.
Okay.
It remains to be seen. As we go to two divisions now, it's going to be tougher for the Purdues and the Wisconsins and Iowas and Minnesotas, because they can't just win their side. They gotta leapfrog 4 iconic teams that recruit at a they're likely. Okay, so if you ask me what is the key to building a national championship team, it's talent.
Yeah,
you have to put back to back highly recruited blue chip players. If you don't have on your team, out of your 85 scholarships, 60 blue chip players, it's hard to win. TCU found that out. You can win a game, but to beat back-to-back teams that are more talented than you, very difficult to do.
We see what Georgia and Kirby Smart have done. I didn't have a lot of exposure to it, but seeing Kirby Smart up close in that semifinal, the way he runs that program holistically on the field, he's not going anywhere.
Right.
When Nick Saban retires, and it might be in 30 years, he might be doing this way long past all of us. What will that mean for the SEC? Because as the SEC has been so strong, but Bama has clearly been the leader in that. I just wonder, how do you think the SEC will react when maybe the greatest college football coach of all time is not there anymore?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, because the way he designed his program and the way he's built it, he's not easily replaced.
Yeah.
But, and mistakes have been made at both Ohio State and Michigan hiring coaches that weren't in the right spot at the right time. So it's going to be a challenge, and you're right. When the bell cow teams from the Big Ten, Ohio State and Michigan are good, or Alabama and Georgia are good, it's good for the whole conference. But, right on the heels right now, if you look at the population growth of Nashville and Tennessee is going to be a stock to buy as it goes. They've been down for a while. Florida's not going away. That's what I think is, it's not the bottom of the conferences. I think it's the middle. I'd like to see the Wisconsins, the Purdues, the Illinois, the Minnesotas just rise up, where those are, when they win a game, it's not, oh my God, this is the biggest upset in the history of the Big Ten. It's just, hey, they played good this year. They got a good football team. And that's the next step.
And I'll let you go with this one, Gary. When you have watched Ohio State, and you said that people in the South say they look at Ohio State and say, oh, it's like an SEC team in the Big Ten.
SEC program.
Did you see, and that is a distinction, because the team is your players on the field, the program is your dedication, what you put into it, your fan base, your alumni, your resources, your money.
Correct.
Have you ever felt like Ohio State, there was something, they got to get a little better here to compete at the highest level? Or do you think they're there? They make a field goal against Georgia. They did beat Alabama in 14. Are they there?
And they beat Miami for a championship. No, I think they're there. I think what Ryan has done is, and continued to recruit high-level receivers and quarterbacks. I was there with Coach Tressel. He built his team a little different, but in modern football, Nick Saban has had to adjust, and I think the adjustment that Ohio State has made to go out and get a little bit more offensive football players is the reason that they're up there and going to be up there for a while.
He's Gary Danielson. Get used to him, Big Ten fans. He's going to be part of your life. Gary, thanks for your time.
Appreciate that. You got it.
All right, joined by Joshua Perry, the best dressed player in Ohio State football history, who's also making major media moves. Joshua, people know you from your Big Ten Network activity, but you've expanded, you've moved on. Tell us how people are going to find you this season with your college football coverage.
Yeah, NBC this year doing pre-halftime and post for the primetime game. We'll also be on Peacock as well throughout the day. So this is a very exciting opportunity for us, I think, as talent to be associated with the Big Ten in a different way has been big, and I know everybody I'm working with is excited about that. For NBC to be associated with the Big Ten Conference, obviously a big deal, and everybody's trying to get in on that for very good reason. But there's also a little bit of legacy that goes with NBC and primetime coverage and what they've done with the NFL, and we want to carry that on as well. So we're super excited. We're getting started off with a bang at Penn State in week 1, and then we will just continue from there.
We're here at Big Ten Media Days, and they had like all the guys up there. They had Gary Danielson from CBS, and they had Todd Blackledge from NBC, and they had Joel Klatt from Fox, all introducing stuff together. Like, does everybody actually like each other, or was that fake? Like, are you fighting over covering the Big Ten?
No, we're all cool. Talk to all these guys. I like them all. I think there's a little bit of ego and pride that comes along with it. I think everybody wants to have the best broadcast and wants to be the most notable show or whatever the case is. But we all get along, and there's a certain level of sharing notes that goes along too, where you got to ask a quarterback a question. Maybe a quarterback asks me as a defensive guy a question about that side of the ball. But a little pride to it, but nothing combative.
A little ego with the show. I'm very familiar with that concept. I think we could have 3 teams in the Big Ten East go 11-1 this year.
Yep.
I think it's possible we get a round robin of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
Why are you going to
each
do this to
beating each other one time? I want a full prediction from you. It feels like the Big Ten is rising to meet the challenge of the 12-team playoff to me. I think it's coincidental, but it's not just USC coming in. It's what Penn State might be embarking on with a quarterback like Drew Aller, a very good defense, what Michigan has been, what Ohio State always is. How good do you think the Big Ten is right now in what is the last year of this era of college football as we get ready for 2024?
I mean, it's Nebraska firing Scott Frost and then going out there and getting Matt Rule. It's Wisconsin firing Paul Chryst and going out there and getting Luke Fickell. It's something Wisconsin never gets rid of a coach in season. And then the money that they paid to Coach Fickell and then the financial commitments that they made there, it's not just the top tier big brand names. It is literally everybody in the conference saying that we have to be competitive or we will get left behind very quickly. And there are teams, the Ohio States and Michigans, the Penn States of the world, that understand that they're always in a window to be really competitive, and the 12-team playoff helps. I'm also, if I'm Wisconsin, I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, so I've got the most wins out of any team in the CFP era that's never actually made the playoff.
Yeah.
We're a pretty damn good team.
Yep.
And now this gives us an opportunity to play in a postseason with meaningful games. And so I think you're right. The level of the conference has elevated because I think everybody sees the landscape around them as an opportunity to elevate and to create relevance for their program.
So you're a Buckeye, but now you're out in the broader world. I mean, I've covered Ohio State for 18 years. I definitely thought there were times when it was like, well, Ohio State's good, but nobody else here is any good. So it doesn't take away from Ohio State, but I don't know who else would win this conference. Is this better? If you're an Ohio State fan, there are Ohio State fans out there right now watching this. Is this better for Ohio State fans? Hey, congratulations. Michigan's awesome. Hey, congratulations. I think Penn State might be one of the 6 best teams in the country. Or should Ohio State fans want to go back to, Ohio State's the only good team here?
Do you like competing?
I think it's good.
All right, I do too. I like to compete. Like you get into the game to compete. And you want it to be tough when you win. I did not like going into a game that I felt like was too easy. I felt like I didn't break a sweat. I didn't get the workout I needed. Like after the game, I wanted to go into the gym and feel like I actually broke a sweat. That is not rewarding. I like to compete. So if you can tell me that we're in a conference where Michigan has leveled up, Penn State has leveled up, and there are other teams trying to figure out what their level up is, and you can still be the top dog, or you can still be a team that is nationally relevant in position to win a national title after going through that, that is rewarding. And so I feel like people should lean into that. If you feel like you recruit the best, you've hired the best, you can develop the best, then it doesn't matter anyway who you got to play and how tough they are. You feel like you're the best, so this is just a different challenge. It's a little bit more rewarding at the end.
It has felt like, I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but as Big Ten fans over the years have looked at the SEC, thought there was SEC bias, thought they were overrated, but I think there was some of that. I also think there was a lot of substance to that. The SEC is really good at this, and I do think the Big Ten level is rising, and so everything that a Big Ten fan would have been jealous of, you now have. But the reality is, for Ohio State fans, is it makes it more likely that you might lose.
Yeah.
Now, in a 12-team playoff world, there's more wiggle room. But that also, I think it is very hard for Ohio State fans, I don't want to say accept, but to embrace the context of that guess what? When your conference gets better, it increases the chances of Ohio State losing a game.
Yeah, it is what it is. And I hate to throw this example out there, but again, if you are nationally relevant and you're really good, last year you lose a game in a 4-team playoff scenario and still be in it with a chance to beat the team that eventually won a national title if you make a field goal at the end of the game. That's how good you are. And you can still lose. And it's kind of the point that's coming together. Like, you just got to be competitive. And I think even when you are much better than anybody else, there's still an opportunity to lose. And that probably feels worse because you were that much better. And so it's definitely interesting. It's definitely different. But, you've heard Saban talk about it year in and year out, and Kirby talked about it, about how much of a grind the SEC is, and even Kirby was like, "Oh, you guys think my schedule is soft? Will you come play it?"
Yeah,
that type of stuff. I think that comes from a place of understanding how talented the teams around them are, and this is a place that has the proximity to talent in the SEC. So they always had talented players, and some of the teams can recruit nationally. I think that in the Big Ten, there are a lot of teams that have shifted their recruiting to maybe a little bit more national to get the premium talent in. But now you look, and I would even go as far as to say, we talk about playing Michigan, you talk about playing Penn State. Michigan State is a toss-up. Nobody talks about Maryland.
Yep.
It's a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
They got a really good quarterback. They're in a talent-rich area, and they've recruited it pretty solidly. Like, nobody talks about that, though. There are a lot of games where you go out there and say, all right, man, we actually got to play ball this week, and that's what life in the Big Ten is like now.
I've talked about this a lot. It's so interesting to me, the state of the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, and it's never acceptable for Ohio State players or coaches or staff or fans to lose to Michigan, no matter how good Michigan is. But Michigan's really good. The idea that Ohio State got to the playoff last year with the Michigan loss, it feels like there are parallel paths to me, that there is the Ohio State-Michigan game, which is part of the bigger Ohio State discussion, but it's different than the can Ohio State win a national championship discussion, because they almost won a national championship last year while losing to Michigan. So it's just an odd thing. Again, context for fans, both matter. I'm not saying one matters more than the other, but I think they're less connected than they have ever been, which is hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, I mean, there was an era where, basically before the BCS, you got people claiming titles and playing the Rose Bowl, whatever the heck was going on. Then you had the BCS, so it was only 2 teams that could make it. So there was basically, the situation was, like, if you lost that game, you probably weren't one of the 2 teams making the national title. Then the playoff comes around, but that comes around in an era where Michigan is not the program that it is right now. Historically, was not playing well compared to how they had done in the past. And so if you lost to a team that was that Michigan, you're probably not getting into the playoff, because people are going to look at you like, oh, you're not that good. It's the last game of the year. You lost to a team that's not that good. You don't deserve to be in. And now all of a sudden we get to a leveled up Michigan into a scenario where the 4 teams and ultimately 12 teams coming down the line that compete in the postseason, you can have a loss and you can get in there, and your loss is actually to a really good team who we think can win a national title, and we're going to put you in there. Like, it is weird, but it's part of that is the evolution of the game. The other part of that is the ebbs and flows of these programs.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to, more than anything right now, it speaks to the state of where Michigan football is, to the point where they're respected enough that you could lose to them and people would still say, yeah, but you're one of the 4 best teams in the country.
If I say to you 3 of the best 6 teams in the country in the Big Ten East.
True.
Okay, I agree with that too. And it's going to be hard. But again, it blows my mind that is happening. It's good for the league. I'm having trouble analyzing college football this season this way, because I'm always more cautious about a team if they don't have their starting quarterback returning. So Georgia, new quarterback, Bama, new quarterback, and we have no idea who it's going to be. Ohio State, new quarterback. Penn State, new quarterback, and Drew Aller. But then you look at Michigan with J.J. McCarthy. You go out nationally. You look at Michael Penix at Washington and Bo Nix at Oregon. You look at Quinn Ewers at Texas. You look at Jaden Daniels at LSU. You look at Jordan Travis at Florida State. There's a lot of really interesting teams sort of in that second tier that have really experienced quarterbacks. And the three best programs in the country, Ohio State, Georgia, and you can throw Clemson in there too. They have new quarterback in Cade Klubnik. Everyone's starting somebody new. Yep. How much should quarterback experience factor into our preseason evaluation of a team where it's like, they got 5 stars, they'll be fine?
I think it matters. I also think that the season is very long and players develop over the course of a year.
Yeah.
It happened the year that we won a national title when I was at Ohio State. I mean, J.T. Barrett wasn't supposed to start, and he continued to get better up until he got hurt. And then Cardell was just a miracle that he was able to do what he did. But the quarterback thing's important. I don't know if it's the only thing that's important. I would also say that your track record as a quarterback developer is a driver of this conversation because it means that you probably recruited really well and you've developed guys in the past, so we trust your ability to do that. It's why when Lincoln Riley has a new quarterback, I don't know how worried people get. Mm-hmm. And even when it was the weird thing with Spencer Rattler in like, oh, man, what is this quarterback situation? Like, well, he had another guy ready to go anyway. And I feel like the elite quarterback whisperer guys get the benefit of the doubt. And so for Ryan Day, I think that's where a lot of people are. I think when you're a program like Clemson, well, you just recruit really good. And so I think that's where people are. And the same thing with Georgia. They just got guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like if you ever watched Extreme Couponers and you see the stockpile that these folks have, and so you pull one off the shelf, you got another one just like it behind them. That's Georgia's roster.
Yeah.
You take 1 5-star out, they got another one just like it behind them.
You got a coupon for suits that I could get?
I wish I had a coupon.
You're not a couponer. Are you a couponer?
I'm not a couponer, but I am financially savvy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But you appreciate couponing.
Yeah, I do.
I should get in on that more. Okay, so as a defensive, I'll say expert, because if we said everybody in this room, raise your hand if you were the leading tackler for a national championship football team, probably no more than 6 or 7 people would raise their hands. No, it would just be you. Leading tackler for a national championship football team. The discussion around Jim Knowles, year one, you're teaching. Okay, maybe guys weren't letting it rip enough. Jim Knowles' history, what he did at Oklahoma State, they got better every year. Statistically, his defenses at Oklahoma State. What do you think of that discussion? Year 2 of a coordinator, what does that do for players in learning a system and then maybe being able to put it on the field, not have mental errors, and let it rip more?
Year 2 is completely different. You have habits in year 2 in a defense. In year 1, you are trying to build the habit. Year 2, you have the habit. There's less thinking. There's more reacting, more adjusting that can happen. I think the other thing that these guys really had to get used to, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, but when you have a coach whose philosophy is I'm going to expose your rear end and you have to hold up and deal with it, that's a hard reality at first. And when you don't have a lot of reps at that, it's very uncomfortable. And I think guys have to play themselves into a level of comfort in this defense, knowing that they may be the odd man out that's on the island and they're the one that the OC on the other side has circled and says, attack him, and you got to make the play, or else it's 88 and out the gate. I think for Jim Knowles as well, there's a rhythm that has to come with his ability to call plays, and I think it's hard to develop. You have to know exactly when you can take the risk and when you can't, based off of the confidence of your players and maybe how tired your players are and how many times your players have repped a certain concept. And those are all things that you have to learn. Like, he's probably been around guys where he could call certain things that are featured for a guy that the players only repped a few times, whereas other players is like, dude, I got to see this like 50 times before I can go out there and do it in a game. And he had to learn that last year and probably had to learn some of that in season. All of that to say, I think a lot of it gets better. I think it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, who do you want to be philosophically? And that means, are you going to continue to gamble or are you going to pull off of it a little bit? And if you're a gambler, that's perfectly fine, because then it gets to point number 2. How can you instill confidence enough in guys that they can make plays, that they can go out there and execute? Because if they can't do it, then you can't gamble. And you can't gamble unless they do it.
I thought they overblitzed in the Michigan game. I thought they
did it a
pulled
little
back
bit against Penn State too.
Yeah, and I thought they pulled back and did a better job against Georgia. But again, talking to people after that, it felt like Ohio State wants to be aggressive, but I do think I think the secondary has a chance to be excellent. And then all of a sudden, when you're aggressive, you look smarter because you got dudes everywhere.
Secondary should be better this year. I also think the defensive line is going to be better and at least more consistent than it was a year ago. The best secondaries that I played with also had a guy named Joey Bosa hitting the quarterback. You know, they had an Adolphus Washington as an explosive player and a young Sam Hubbard and things of that nature. It's not to take away from the guys in the secondary, but it is to say that their job is about 100 times easier when the sack numbers are up.
Yeah. Last thing, and I'll let you go, Joshua, and we appreciate your time, and make sure you're following the Joshua Perry career. It's a rocket ship all the way to the top at NBC Sports. I think Ohio State fans are very aware of Michigan run game, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. I think everyone thinks is the best running back combo in the country. What they do on the offensive line, Sharon Moore is a tremendous offensive coordinator. They have their defensive coordinator back. I'm almost going to take Michigan for granted. Michigan's going to be there. The Penn State defense, I think Chop Robinson, as good as any edge guy in the conference. Yep. Kalen King, maybe the best corner in the conference, experienced linebackers. And we're talking about year 2 of Manny Diaz at Penn State as a defensive coordinator, just like we're talking Jim Knowles. This Penn State defense, and again, they have the best left tackle. They have 2 really good running backs. But the Penn State defense, to me, has a chance to be a huge factor in how this Big Ten race shakes out. What do you see when you see the Penn State defense?
It's aggressive. It's well coached. It's disciplined. It's an edgy defense. Manny Diaz, I think, was a guy who went in there with instant credibility a year ago, and the players, like, they were fully bought in to what he was teaching on that side of the football. I also think that the development of the personnel is a big deal. And even when you look at last year's defense, Jair Brown is a safety for them that I don't think enough people talked about. I thought he was phenomenal all year long. I believe he was a top 3-round pick. You had Joey Porter Jr., who I think people maybe talked about a little bit too much, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I think a lot of folks were enamored by the physical traits there, and he was a very physical player. But all that to say, personnel for them, I think, really gave them the confidence to be a little bit more free with the way that they could call defense. And I think this year they'll be able to do a similar thing. And I think that they have a coach that they trust and believe in, who brought in instant credibility because of who he had been in the past. And it really worked out for him. So I look at this Penn State team, and I think the biggest question is the quarterback as advertised?
Yeah.
And if he is, going to be a hell of a day against them, whoever's playing them. And I think if the quarterback takes a little bit of time to develop, that's where you might have a chance.
Right. 2024 Penn State's going to be really interesting when Drew Aller's got a year under his belt.
Yeah, buddy.
Joshua Perry, as good as it gets, watch him on Peacock. You are going to elevate. People get nervous because this is real. Announcers are in your life, and people got very accustomed to ESPN, and then they embraced and loved Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt and the big noon crew at Fox. And this is a change for NBC and CBS to be part of this. And I think this is it's a real life thing for fans. Like some of the stuff, the money and networks, that's not real. Announcers are real. And I think it is good for Ohio State fans and Big Ten fans that Joshua Perry is going to be on NBC so we can all relax. Oh, Joshua has us. It's all good.
I hope so. I hope that's how people feel about it. I just want everybody to know I'm excited. One of the things that I take pride in is how I cover the conference and the players specifically, but also the coaches and the programs, because I was that player not all that long ago, and I understand the pride and tradition. I also understand the pain that comes along with playing the game. And so I want to be able to bring that little bit of that into everybody's living room. But I'm super excited for the season that's coming up. We ran through a whole bunch of storylines, nothing but intrigue, people. So get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a fun one.
Joshua Perry, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
All right. Thanks to Gary and Joshua for joining us on that. Let's talk about game day. So I talked about this last year. I think you guys know that game day is like Columbus. Game day has been in Columbus 22 times. That is the most of any site. Second is Alabama at 16, then Florida and LSU at 13 each, Michigan at 12. Overall appearances that you're playing in the game where College game day is, this includes bowl games and all this stuff. Ohio State leads with 56. Alabama is next with 54. Then a big drop, Florida 42, Oklahoma 39, Michigan 36. So we know that game day has loved Columbus and has loved Ohio State. When this all got announced last year, when game day, the crew was in for the opener with Notre Dame, we were over there and we were interviewing people. I was like asking about this. So I was talking to people there. Will game day be in Columbus less often in a world where ABC, ESPN is not televising Big Ten games? Well, they weren't televising Alabama games when Alabama has been the second most popular host with 16. So it doesn't mean that game day is never going to come to Columbus again. I did talk to people at ESPN around the crew who said, you know what, especially if it's like kind of a coin flip on where they should go, if they're already doing the game for ABC, ESPN, logistically, tie goes to the logistics. So that tie will no longer go to Columbus. That tie is going to go to other places where ESPN and ABC are broadcasting games. So my guess is it is a little less frequent. I think that game day will not be in Columbus as much as it has been. If it's sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, but I would bet guaranteed there'll be at least one Ohio State game a year, probably in Columbus at least once a year. Big Noon's still going to be around. I think Big Noon, the Fox show, is going to lean into it more because it is like the Ohio State-Michigan game last year. Game day, the ESPN people are over by St. John Arena, and then Big Noon's over by, where the workout place is around the corner, where where the people work out. I don't know where it is because I never worked out in college. So Big Noon, I think, is going to be excited to take front and center. They're going to I bet you they take the good stage area over by St. John Arena, first of all, because it felt like ESPN had dibs on that for game day. So I think a little less game day in your life. But I did ask Kirk Herbstreit about this because Kirk Herbstreit has been, there's been sort of at times a fraught relationship. It was like the whole thing is like, I moved to Nashville because Ohio State fans were so jacked up about stuff. But listen, man, he's an Ohio State quarterback. He's a Buckeye, right? He's in my book. I did that last year. So, most of you people listening here to me know that. But I wrote a book called The Road to Ohio State, a recruiting book. And it's chapters on all these different, how all these different players were recruited by Ohio State and their recruiting stories. And Herbie was unbelievable. I was like, I'll get Kirk Herbstreit has a great story. He has a great recruiting story. And I was like, wouldn't it be nice if Kirk Herbstreit maybe mentioned the book? Hey, this guy did a recruiting book and I'm in it. And he did a wonderful writer. And would have to say that. He could say terrible writer, but my chapter's good. And then it was like, he has a whole book. He had his own book, which I didn't know at the time when I interviewed him. So it was like he kind of wasn't going to promote my book. But you can get my book if you want. Road to Ohio State. You can email me at dlamer. Am I allowed to do that here? I'm just an infomercial now. dlamerise@gmail.com if you want to buy a book. That's horrible. I can't believe I just did that. You can call me out for that. So he's sad. That was the main thing. It's weird. So in the end, by the way, it is weird that ESPN and ABC are not going to be doing Big Ten games anymore. So that's definitive. It's a little weird for everybody. The people I talked to around the crew said that it was weird. And that's what I was interested in when I talked to Herbie about that. Are you going to miss this? And he did admit that he is going to miss it. It's been such an integral part of his life. I'm sad. I love Ohio State. I love the Big Ten. I love coming into these stadiums. It's a highlight for me when we can come here or go to Penn State or Wisconsin for game day. So he did love this, right? He loved the Big Ten part of this. He is a Big Ten guy. So here's the thing that I thought was interesting, and just keep this in the back of your mind, because he said, I was like, it's sort of when I was asking about, this is last September, I'm asking about this stuff. And it's sort of like, hey, are you never going to call Ohio State games again? Maybe in the playoff. And he said, well, how long is the TV contract? You kind of don't know what's going to happen. What is it? 6 years, 7 years? Who knows what will happen after that. I don't think it's the end of my opportunities in my career. For that time period, it will be. Yeah, I definitely wasn't celebrating it, but it's the business like we're all seeing. Everything's evolving in this sport. So he's not happy. This was last September. Not happy that ESPN and ABC are not doing Big Ten anymore. Let's just match this up on his personal contract with ESPN, ABC, and then he also has this deal with Amazon where he does NFL games. When he was talking last year, he had a 5-year deal. I think he had 2 more years remaining and signed a 3-year extension. So his last year of his deal that has him doing Amazon NFL games and ESPN, ABC college games is 26-27. The current Big Ten TV contract that includes CBS, NBC, Fox, Big Ten Network, and no ESPN, ABC runs through 29-30. Okay. So this is the first year of 7. So that means for the first 4 years of this current contract, where there's no ESPN, ABC with the Big Ten, Kirk Herbstreit's locked into ESPN. The final 3 years of it, he's not locked into ABC, ESPN. I'm not trying to meddle in Herbie's business. I think he will be on a network that calls Big Ten games when he has a new contract. That's my guess. And we are going to see that the first 2 years of the 12-team playoff in 24 and 25 next year and the year after are going to be on ESPN. Then they're going to bid it out because that's part of the original 12-year deal that ESPN had with the playoff. And we're getting to a 12-teamer after 10 years. So year 11, year 12 are on the old TV deal, right? Even though the playoff's expanding. They're going to bid out that playoff and they're going to get multiple partners, just like the NFL has multiple partners with its playoff. So you will see other opportunities. If for right now, Kirk Herbstreit wants to be involved with the playoff, well, you got to be on ESPN, ABC. That's not going to be the case down the road. So that's my prediction, that you'll see him on a network that in the back half of this 7-year deal for the Big Ten, you'll see Kirk Herbstreit as part of that. And I would expect a little less game day, but you're not saying goodbye to game day. Okay. That's what I think. And this is the end of Kirk Herbstreit when I was asking him these questions last September. I'm not really closing the door on it. I don't know where I'm going in my career. I just signed a new 5-year deal with Amazon and ESPN. I don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. I don't know what I'll be doing. I don't even know if I'll be doing college football in 5 years. But my hope was to come back and to have a chance on a weekly basis to call games in the Big Ten. That would be my hope. So is this like a big... I'm just telling you. It's kind of a big deal. He's been in your life, and sometimes you guys have been mad at him, but he's been in your life a lot. And he's not going to be for at least the next 4 years. So get ready for that. Okay, I hope that helped a little bit. You're going to get Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson in week 1 for Indiana. You're going to get Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge for week 4 with Notre Dame. You're going to get Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson for the Michigan game like you have been getting for a really long time. And then just be prepared in between for all the stuff that's going to happen. So we're not only going to talk about, it's not an announcer show. Although I think talking about announcers is infinitely more interesting than talking about who's making money, because you don't get the money. You don't get the money, and they don't cut you a deal. I think every time they make another gazillion off a TV deal, they should lower ticket prices. Get back to me when that happens. So in the meantime, we'll keep talking about football. We'll talk about the things that matter to you guys as fans. We'll appreciate you finding us here in the podcast feed. Kings of Columbus. That's what the show's called when I'm hosting it. I think that's like a way to think about it. Kings of Columbus. A lot of the time, Landis is going to be on that with me. Sometimes I'm going to be solo doing a new thing that we're calling Buckeye Beefs. It's like the Rants podcast I did on Buckeye Talk. And we are going to be hitting you multiple times a week. We're still working on, I just got here. And then I was at Big Ten Media Days. I had to get a computer. A berm had to order me a microphone. I kind of got sick. And now we're back. All right. And we're fired up, man. Okay. That'll do it for this episode. I hope it helped. For Joshua Perry and Gary Danielson. It's not really for them. They aren't paid by us, so I don't have to say that. Thanks to them. I'm Doug Lesmerises. Thanks for listening to Kings of Columbus.